Hi again. Welcome back to the eighth part of the poverty and the time use surveys lecture of the general economics course. This lecture series is prepared for the Middle Technical University Northern Cyprus campus, and we were looking to the data of the uh, article, which shows the head count of the people who are time poor in both urban areas and the rural areas and women and men and boys and girls. Um, and as we have seen, when we look to the 50, when we use 50 hours as the time poverty limit, then men are more time poor in them cities, although by a small amount relatively, 4% basically. While in the rural areas, well, basically, the percentage of women who are facing time poverty is 62% higher than men. More than half of the women are time poor if you use 50% limit. So even on average, women are experiencing time poverty much more than men, basically. When we use 7.5 hours a week as the time poverty line, which makes 14 hours if you use them, uh, 5 day week. Uh, I mean, uh, numbers. But even for the 7 day a week, that's 10 hours, more than 8 hours. Even I mean, without the uh, without the weekend. So if you use this ratio, in that case actually more men in the urban areas are time poor than in the rural areas. Actually, that's even true for the 50 hours mark. Um, so uh, that means more, men have higher burdens proportionally than women probably. Men in urban areas have disproportionately more burden, relative burden compared with women in compared with the rural areas, which means the inequality of the shift of burden is much more severe in the rural areas than the urban areas. Probably that might be telling that. Um, but still, even in the urban areas, women are well, the percentage of women that are time poor is 59% higher. That means actually, when we just look to the poverty line, number of men is and women are more or less equal. Maybe percentage of women and men who are below the time poverty line was more or less equal. But when we take the more severe measure, the percentage of women is significantly higher. And same level of difference also exists for the rural areas. I mean, this is 3.18 times higher when we talk about women. 26.4 as opposed to 8.3%. Um, so, as we increase the severity of poverty, the difference between men and women is increasing. What about children? First, let's look at the less severe measurement of poverty for children, 9 hours per week. When we took 9 hours per week, actually, almost half of the girls, 56.8% of the girls, are time poor, and 40.9% of the boys are time poor again, uh, which means, well, 39, the percentage of girls is 1.39% higher. When we look to the urban areas, 20.4% of the girls are time poor, which means they are working more than 9 hours per week, both for domestic chores but also for them. It might also be possible they might be working for them wage labor. And same number is 7.7 for the boys. In this case, I mean the difference is much higher. Of course, I mean the percentages are lower. That's also allows that. Uh, when we look to the higher, more severe uh, measurement, 50 hours per week, that means actually uh, even that could be a line for the adults. More than standard working time for adults even. In the rural areas, basically 14.2% of girls are above this line, and 10% of boys, in both cases higher than 10%. Although again, the girls are having disproportionate burden. In urban areas, the ratio is much smaller actually. For girls 2.2, for boys 1.9. Even though, well, girls are significantly higher, still we might say the ratios are close. What will happen to these numbers? Let's see first that. When we are taking into account consumption or income poverty. With which I mean, let's subtract from all of these time poor people the ones that are not income poor. So who are at the same time poor and income poor? That would be an interesting question, and let's look to that. We are passing certain points. We'll look to that. Of course, especially when we are talking about the boys and girls. For boys and girls, for adult people, it might be possible to choose to remain time poor, but well, boys and girls are probably, even if their families are not income poor, probably forced by their families. Probably that's not their choice, but most likely, at least, that's not their choice. Anyway, let's look to the numbers. Well, for the rural areas, well, the ratio has fallen to 7.4% for men and 8.1% for women. Now the women are facing a more severe time poverty for 50 hours per week mark. Previously, it was 37 and 35% basically. And rural areas it was 34% and 56%. Now let's look to that. 19.5% or 31.5% is the case when we are getting out the non-income poor people. Well, women and men are close in this case, although women are still facing a higher burden. When we are taking the 7.5 hours per week case, well, then the number is significantly lower, 4%. 4% is even half of it. But in case of women, the number is still double the man, more than double of the number of the men. Again, in case of the rural areas, 4.2% of the men are both income and time poor. 14% of women are both income and time poor. That might mean for among the income poor families, women are both in urban and rural areas might be facing the burden more, just like it is told. And when the families are not income poor, well, men might be choose to become time poor more by choice than by circumstances. While this, of course, I'm talking about disproportion. I'm proportional relative to women, and relative to men, women might be becoming more time poor by the circumstances compared with men. Of course, the overall numbers still percentage of women who are time poor by choice might be more than the percentage of women who are time poor by circumstances. But women tend to become more time poor by circumstances than men. That's the one thing. What about the boys and girls? Well, the number is very small and basically a little bit more than for the girls in the urban areas when we took the higher number. Well, significantly higher, 5% and 2.2%, and again, significantly more for the girls when we take 9 hours per week. Well, for time poor and income poor boys and girls, when we take 9 hours per week, still 30%, 30.7% of boys and girls are both time poor and income poor. The ratio, the burden is shared more similarly between boys and girls in the rural areas. Still, the percentage is higher for girls to 8% higher for girls. Opposed, the numbers are 34% and 27%. In the rural, when we take the 50 hours mark, again, the for the girls numbers 8.6, for the boys 6.6. So what about the gap, time gap, time poverty gap? In that case, you can see this is the one without the, well, we don't subtract them, people who are not income poor. The number is higher for women and for girls in all cases, which basically means, and the difference is higher, which means actually the women are experiencing time poverty more severe. And the difference between ratios is getting larger. In general, you cannot particular numbers and see whether it is also true for particular numbers, but in general, we can see the picture, in my opinion. More or less same thing here also. Of course, we cannot see for boys and girls. We can only see numbers for adults. And pretty much in all cases, I believe, the numbers are getting, the difference is getting larger. Maybe except the urban areas in this case. Although there also, this gets smaller, but it's not significantly smaller still. You also have here the squared, which is actually punishing them kind of, well, kind of if you have a more concentrated high level of time poverty, the number is higher when you have squared. But we are not looking to square time poverty gap, so we just look to the first table here. Table. Lastly, there is a regression also. Let's look to the regression. I won't look to much more detail, but mainly age is making people more poor. It's making women more poor than men. Of course, being female is making people more poor for both type of measurements. In one of them, you count all time poor people. In the other one, you are counting the people who are both time poor and income poor. But mainly the coefficients are the same. Rural area, of course, being in rural area increases the poverty level of the in general, it's increasing the poverty of the people, especially poverty of women is increasing significantly. Being disabled increasingly decreases the possibility of time poor, probably people are not working. Being monogamous is increasing the possibility of being time poor. Being divorced is basically increasing the possibility of being time poor, but doesn't increase the possibility of being at the same time time poor and income poor. And you can see other factors being influenced in children, being seniors. These are interesting, but I think not very, very critical numbers. So this is mainly this article. It gives nice overall information over the time poverty ratios, but this also gives how we can expand the concept of the time poverty, basically, the poverty concept, by adding time poverty, how we can make it measurable, how we can use it. And what is the conditions in one country, and how we can highlight the conditions of time poverty in a particular country by getting, well, detailed data. Anyway, in the last article, which is the geometry article, this one, we will also use the concept to evaluate a particular policy. But while doing that, we will also do something interesting. We will basically, well, give value of the labor spent particular members of the household, basically, which is the children in this case. So what is the value lost by the families when children go to school? Anyway, this we will do in the next